everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Outside Insider podcast here on Philly Sports Network with myself, Liam Jenkins. You know the score by now. All things Eagles related, wrapped up, put inside a bundle and dropped from the sky by a pelican as if it were a newborn baby, which I thought until the age of 12 was how babies were made. Oh, how I was mistaken. I hope you're well, guys. If you are new to this podcast, we are available on the following platforms. Apple Music, Spotify, Stitcher, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, YouTube, something called Podbox, the Google Play Store, the Android one, and I've even heard inside a can of White Claw. And I have heard so much about White Claw recently. I've never tried it. I'm in England. They get called Lambrini Liam. You know, I don't know what White Claw is, but it seems like it's in the same vein. So we're going to hide an episode or two in there. But we are coming off, ladies and gentlemen, what can only be described as a contrasting performance from what we saw against the Tennessee Titans. This Eagles team came out against the Jags preseason week 2 and looked great. Like, they look really good. Now, the points we're going to make critically, kind of picking them apart, it's not like we're viewing them and suddenly going, oh, everything's gone wrong and there's X amount to worry about. They are nitpicks. Like, we are picking a needle in a haystack right now. Because overall, the team performance, maybe 87 of those 90 players, I know they didn't all play, let's say 40 of the 50 that did, was certainly very good. But the one question mark I think everyone has coming away from this game is whether or not the Eagles are going to sign a new quarterback. Because you come into this matchup, and the consensus is, well, the Eagles still have 2 quarterbacks, it'll be good for Thorson to get him some experience, maybe give him a half of football. He ended up playing close enough to 3.5 quarters, because after 4 pass attempts, Cody Kessler was absolutely clobbered, went down after Andre Dillard slid inside to pick up a blitzing linebacker. Everyone assumed that was on him. After closer analysis and some great work by Jeff Schwartz, it wasn't. Cody Kessler goes down. He's in concussion protocol. We don't know how long he's going to be there, is the simple answer. It may be a few days, it may be a few weeks. That's the thing with concussions, you never really know. And I'm sure as much as Kessler would like to get back to the field, the last thing the Eagles want to do is ride on the verge of aggression on that side of it. It's just not going to sit well. So Clayton Thorson comes out, does a Clayton Thorson thing, which we will talk about shortly. We have an official Clayton Thorson song, which must be sung whenever he scores a touchdown from here on out. We'll get to that a little bit later as well. But Thorson now is one of 2 healthy quarterbacks. Carson Wentz being the other, who, although suited up, didn't get any action at all. I mean, he was cleaner that game than a nun's internet browsing history. Like, Carson Wentz was so far away from that, they didn't want to risk it. They didn't want him out there. Absolutely fine. But now you go into a situation where Thorson's going to play 4 quarters, and if he goes down, then you're in trouble. And it's like when, I'm not sure if America has this, but when you're in school and you do science experiments and you have to buddy up and a teacher's like, right, get into pairs, pair up, form a team. And you start looking across the room and you give your mate the eye. You're like, all right, Gerald, you and me. But for me, there was one instance where I think I must have been 15 or so years old, and our exam, like, it was a practical exam and it counted towards our final grade. And the friend I would normally go with wasn't there. Absent, ill, I don't know, I think he hurt his leg in football or something the day before. So I was like, what do I do? And then I remembered, I don't really have any other friends in this class. So me scampering around the room, looking around for someone to partner up with. I was the weird kid at school. I had oddly long hair, listened to Slipknot, was thrown in bins. I wasn't that popular kid. And I, of course, get stuck with the other kid. I think I'm weird. You know, I'm a weird. I mean, put it this way. My job in England is to talk American football. It's pretty unconventional. But there's a difference between that and eating crayons, right? I was stuck with the crayon eating kid who somehow, in the course of said practical exam, managed to set my book on fire with a Bunsen burner, with all my notes, which was fantastic. That was what I wanted. So the lesson I learned from that was always make sure you have more than one friend, because in the event something comes up where said friend isn't available, you might end up with the crayon-eating child who burns your science book. It's not a good look. So the Eagles are now in a bit of a tricky spot because they've got their best mate sat next to them. You know, they're laughing, they're joking, they're throwing paper planes around, but do they really want to expose him? Do they really want him on the field? I think we would have seen it by now. Like, most starters who are going to get, that kind of repetition in preseason, it's happened. Marcus Mariota has got it. Jameis Winston's been out there for a little bit. You look at the Falcons and inversely the way they look after Matt Ryan, or the Chargers and Phillip Rivers, or the Saints and Drew Brees, or the Rams even and Jared Goff to an extent. The guys who are going to throw in preseason have done it by now. Which means that unless Cody Kessler is ready to go by week 3, it is the Clayton Thorson show. So it would not surprise me if the Eagles do bring in another signal caller. And I don't want to harp on too much about this because I spent a solid chunk of last week's show saying how maybe Greg Ward or Braxton Miller could be the guy. Could be guys to come in and take snaps, and I'm all for it. We saw Greg Ward Jr. last night, actually, step onto the field on a Wildcat play and make a throw almost complete. I would have been very flustered had that happened, but ultimately it didn't. Now, had Clayton Thorson laid a multitude of eggs last night, as in enough to open a chicken farm, this would be a very different discussion. There is going to be now a 50-50 split of people who will say, you know what? Give Thorson the whole game. Let's get this guy reps. He's our developmental quarterback. Sudfeld's out for very long. Cass has a concussion. It's not like these guys have suffered torn ACLs. They've not suffered, their ulterior ligaments, or they've broken their shoulder one that sounds like, I forgot what it's, AC joint, that one. They've not suffered an AC joint sprain. It's just, as far as NFL injuries go, it's minor. Although, to me, the idea of a concussion is petrifying. To an NFL player, it's part of what you do. You get through it, unfortunately. And it's a horrible, horrible way to look at it. And it's great the NFL's putting a lot more focus on safety. And that's what worries me with this Kessler thing, is that he may be out for a few weeks. Depends on the severity of the concussion, because obviously every single one is going to be different. But if the Eagles are going to sign a quarterback, there isn't many names available. And I made a point last night in the live stream that Landry Jones has just signed a contract with the XFL to play for one of 8. He's got no idea who he's playing for yet. He's signed for one of 8 teams apparently, which is brilliant. But Landry Jones, the same guy who threw 4 interceptions against the Eagles in preseason, is now going to be a starter in the XFL. If you're a name like Brocktober, the Brock Lobster, or Travone Boykin, who's one of the other free agents available, I mean, are they going to go into a negotiation room and say, oh wow, so you want me to be your QB3 for 2 weeks and then cut me? Where pretty much none of that money's going to be guaranteed, so there's no point in me really joining. Don't really know what to do. The Eagles' best hopes is to find someone that gets waived. I mean, for instance, Danny Etling was recently waived by the Patriots. He caught on with the Falcons, but that would have been a guy just to fill a void for a couple of weeks. Now, my quarterback crush here, Alex Magoo. I mean, last night, I don't know why they're calling him Magoo. Or maybe his name is Magoo. Maybe I'm just a bit weird with names. But little money Manziel Magoo was sprinting around, spinning off defenders. Bring him in for a week. Get him off the Jags. Why not? But there's no need for an emergency guy. If Kessler's injury was substantial, then maybe. The worry is if you get to week 4 and Kessler's not back. And then you're going to have 2 consecutive games for Thorson where there is a chance he could get banged up. And if he does, and he's not ready for week 1, you're like, okay, right, well, now what do we do? Because you've got to bring in someone who presumably understands the system or just does something. So, as of right now, no immediate concern. Give the reins to Lord Clayton. If it gets to week 4 and Kessler's still not back, bearing in mind they've got to get through joint practices with Baltimore yet. Kessler can't just drop in and go through a walkthrough. He's going to get banged around. So he may be kept out for that. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if the Eagles do go out and sign a veteran. I know a few people saying Matt Schaub last night. Just anyone to come in, hold the books for a while, and take hits. They're going to be a quarterbacking punching bag. I'd do it. My little 38-inch wings vertical, I'd be right in there taking wallops. I don't know. I'm interested. I think that the Eagles would be in their right mind to look elsewhere. The other way you could position it, as I said before, that wide receiver battle is looking intense. Greg Ward, Braxton Miller, both former college quarterbacks, both very accomplished college quarterbacks as well, who made the transition to wide receiver. Just say, look, this battle for wide receiver 5 or 6 is so intense. One of you guys has to separate. Who's it going to be? Who's going to go above and beyond to get on this team? And then just have them take a quarter of snaps. Doesn't have to be relevant. He's not going to make the team as a quarterback. But hey, if you could get a Taysom Hill level Wildcat guy in, or someone that has that experience, just to hold down the fort for a little bit, that knows the playbook and the calls, I don't see the problem. If he has to hand it off 9 times in a row, they did it in the 4th quarter. Boston Scott and Donnell Pumphrey put together a mesmerising drive against a 4th string Jags defence, but it was the point that stands. The Eagles can run the ball down your throats if you need to, and if you just get someone like Ward to do it, what's the harm? What is the harm? So that's my view on it. I'm really dreading in about 20 minutes time where the Eagles announce the signing of a quarterback and I just finish this podcast, because as we all know, that's how this podcast tends to go. That is just the way the cookie unfortunately crumbles, and it goes all over the floor and my dog eats it, and then it starts smelling everywhere, and it's just not the one. But let me know what you think, guys, if you're on YouTube, down in the comments. If you're not, if you could share your support by rating this podcast 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or any platform you can rate it, that would mean the world to me. If not, the occasional, that's not someone knocking at your door. That was 5 taps for me for rating the podcast. But 5 stars on iTunes, leave a little review. It is the best way to help this podcast grow, and we can't do it without you. So that would mean the absolute world to me. But I've got a treat for you, and it's going to come after a soppy speech. I've got to firstly say a massive thank you to anyone listening to this who was in last night's live stream. For those of you who weren't, where were you to begin with? I mean, unless you were getting married or you were on a date or some important life event or just anything really at this point. I'm not shocked, I'm disappointed. It's like when your parents, I'm not angry, I'm disappointed. It's one of them. I'm not, seriously. But genuinely, like, anyone that came, thank you so much. Like, we had an absolute blast last night. I didn't think it would be possible to beat week 1 hype. There was a tiny part of me that had a doubt, thinking, you know what? Last week's stream was so successful because it was week 1, everyone's hyped, everyone's trying to find a stream for the game, and they're going to accidentally fall into this and hopefully enjoy themselves. But week 2, you all came back in your... Like, there were, I think, a total of over 7,000 of you that listened. There were over like 300 of you in the chat at one point again. It was unreal, and the support you're showing, the community that we're building is amazing, and I wouldn't have it any other way. You guys are the best fans on the planet, so thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for sharing that experience with me, because it is a lot of fun. I put my heart and soul into it, so since last night I woke up, done a video today, we've got the podcast coming now, been a couple articles as well. Like, I'm pumped to be bringing you guys everything I've got, essentially, and the fact that you're all here listening to it is amazing. But I'm sure that the biggest thing we can all really take away, other than Kessler, was Clayton Thorson had his pre-game oranges, didn't he? I don't know how else to explain it, really. The Northwestern product, after going 2 for 9 in week 1, just walks onto the field, goes 16 of 26 for 175 yards, a touchdown, and an interception that really wasn't an interception. They just kind of said, do you know what, it's the 4th quarter, it's preseason, have the interception, lads, it's fine. Now, on closer examination, I've watched the game again this morning, so I've still got to go through it like a 3rd or 4th time, especially for the Thorson film room. Ooh! Right, I don't know what sound effect this is, but I'm going to try it again, and hopefully I'll get the ooh. So, for the Clayton Thorson film room... Oh god, no, that's a gun again. I'll try one more time. For the Clayton Thorson film room... Yeah, that wasn't what I was looking for. We're gonna go with it. This soundboard doesn't work. It doesn't work. The LJ soundboard, though, that someone suggested in last night's stream, with the Bam Bam Crumpets and Thick Boy Mints, if you know, this is what you're missing out. Premium content. But Clayton, from what I've seen, Thorson was alright. Okay, he was average. The issue is that he was coming off such a bad week. Such an awful week, where if he'd have just completed one more pass, it would have been an improvement. The bar was so low, he could have stepped onto the field, threw a check down, it was a touchdown, and we'd go, MVP. Get him on Carson Wentz level money right now and trade Wentz. Like, it just would happen. Like, the bar was that unmistakably low. Anything Thorson did would have been... He could have breathed and it would have been an improvement. But it wasn't without error. Even on the Greg Ward Jr. touchdown, that ball was underthrown. He overthrew several other receivers. He was anything but perfect. But he was Clayton. And before we get into the ins and outs of his game, I've presented to you a little song. A lot of people tell me to stick to soccer, they say. They're like, stick to soccer, you damn lanky, good-looking 38-inch vertical, having heartbroken, mention it every podcast, Brit. And I go, do you know what? Maybe I will. So what happens if I take a Charlton chant for Lyle Taylor, my MVP, my hero, and I apply it to Clayton Thorson? The answer may be the anthem of the summer. And this is only a 30-second preview. I don't think the actual song has any lyrics, if I'm honest with you. So we're just going to take the chorus, and I present to you the song which every single time throughout his career that I'm aware of it, Clayton Thorson throws a touchdown, which we're expecting at least one in the next 2 weeks, this song will come out. Clayton Thorson, da 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 da. Clayton Thorson, da 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 da. Clayton Thorson, da 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 da. Clayton Thorson, da 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 da. Clayton Thorson. Well, I hope that whet the appetite, because there is going to be approximately 30 more seconds where that came from, and that's what I told my ex-girlfriend not too long ago. What? Anyone say no? Alright then. But no, on a serious note, I hope that will be tweeted out with a little video montage of Thorson every time he scores. If you enjoy it, I hope to see you singing it along. Record a video of you singing it, tweet it to me, and I'll send you a t-shirt. How's that? With that song in the background, I don't know what the instrumental is. I think it's called This Girl. If you find the instrumental, record a video of you singing Clayton Thorson over it, I'll send you a t-shirt for free. How's that? That's a win-win. You get excited about Clayton Thorson and a free t-shirt. What was to lose other than your dignity? It's basically a dream come true. But Thorson's overall play, as I said before, it was alright on closer observation. It was a bit overshadowed by Johnny Manziel II. Let's be real there for it. Let's not take anything away from him, because him and his haircut and the arm sleeve tattoo was just a bit of a mesmerising sight, really. Whereas King Clayton comes out and does what? That first drive, I was impressed. I mean, there was one really, really good throw that had me weak at the knees, and that was to 6'6" Carlton Agudosi, and he almost overthrew him. I mean, he did well to loft the ball over two defenders. It was such a tight throw to make. Not many quarterbacks can make that throw regularly. But the fact Thorson went over the top, it was a high-low read. I think he had Agudosi on like a corner route, and just put it perfectly. And Agadosi's feet were like a little ballet dancer. He was toe tapping just on the edge of the sideline, hauls it in for a catch, and that was the prettiest pass I've seen. But Thorson's balls still wobble. He doesn't throw the cleanest pass I've seen. It's certainly not Sam Bradford level by any stretch of the imagination, but he's getting the job done. And my main worry, as I've said many times, both on this YouTube channel, on the podcast, on the website, is that I thought Thorson was genuinely going to hold people back. I had a worry in the back of my mind that, you know what, if he performs like he did last week, players like Donnell Pumphrey, players like Boston Scott, players like Greg Ward Jr., Charles Johnson, Matt Collins, all of them needing those valuable snaps and those reps to get the ball in their hands and show what they can do, are going to be left with balls sailing over their heads and them just in a complete sense of disarray. And like, well, what more can they do? All they can do really is show before the ball gets there. And that didn't happen. He actually elevated the team around him. And that is perhaps the biggest compliment I can give to a 5th round pick who has struggled in the spring, struggled in the summer, and has come alive when the pressure is at its greatest. Because if Thorson struggled, they can't bench him. It's not like they can go, yeah, Clayton, not being funny, lad, but you completed 3 of the last 29. Come on, out you come. They can't do it. They can't do it. Because there's no one else. So Thorson comes in knowing he has to play a whole game. And at that point, with the second string offense, he had to do something. And he did. And he played very well, for what it's worth. It wasn't perfect again, but it was enough. And that is the biggest compliment you can give someone in that position. But talking of compliments, I like giving you guys compliments a lot. It's become an integral part of my brand. But it's time for my favourite part of the show, and I've got to dig deep on this because you guys were flooding me with questions last night, and by the time I put the actual image out, there's been loads, so I've got to get through them. So bear with me for a jumbo version of Thank You Next. This is, of course, a part of the show where you can tag me in your questions at Liam Jenkins PSL on Twitter, and I will answer them right now. Not now, but in 30 seconds when I start the segment. So here we go. Thank you next at SamKimber24. How do you think our current QB drama will be solved? Obviously, Wentz remains a starter, but with Nate out, do we pick up another or stick with what we've got? I think for week 3, they'll stick. There's no point in hitting when you've already got 16 and the dealer's got a 10. You might as well take the risk. So I think you're going to stand on 16, pray the dealer busts, and then you're going to get Kessler back for week 4. That's the way I can see that going. Thank you next. Will Roberts says, who's been the most impressive player in preseason so far? That's a good question. I think you can make a case for someone like LJ Fort, who has been really consistent. Deshaun Hall, though, for me, I mean, the fact that he leads the NFL in tackles for a loss, in QB hits and sacks after 2 weeks, given that, I mean, there are a lot of preseason games to play, but that's good. So I would say Deshaun Hall. On offense, maybe Markin Michelle, but overall, yeah, I think Deshaun Hall is easily a winner there. Callum Sumners wants his free t-shirt, which I think he won a little bit ago, so I'll get that sent out to you, Callum, I'm sorry. Thank you next at JordyFighter14. Who did the best on offense? Who was the best in chat? And who do you think, or how good do you think the cornerbacks are overall? Hashtag ThickBoyMints. That's JordyFighter141. Who did the best on offense? I would argue Big V from a second watch. I think he was really solid and showed a lot of promise as a guard. There was very, very little I had to complain about Big V last night. There were a couple stray stats from Dillard. I think Mailata was okay. But the main cog on that line keeping it all together, believe it or not, was Big V. Outside of that, you've got to give props to Clayton Thorson where it's due. Everyone expected a shambles, and what he gave was less of a shambles and just immediate. It's like you go to a takeaway that you know normally gives you bad guts, like it's a dodgy takeaway that you like, but you know you're going to be ill after it the next day, and it doesn't make you ill. You're like, that was good. That was for what it's worth. That's a good takeaway. So I would say he's certainly up there. Thank you next. One Dave Hendo. Does Sproles warrant a running back roster spot, or was he brought back for sentimental reasons? It's tricky, isn't it? You can certainly see why the Eagles would want to bring him back, but at the same time, I think that it was definitely more of a sentimental thing than it was roster spots. But there is a significant drop-off. Like, you can add Darren Sproles into that RB4 spot and already see the improvement he's going to bring. Especially when you've got guys like Boston Scott and Donnell Pumphrey, who are probably a step down from Sproles at this current time. So Sproles, I think we can assume, makes the roster as that bridge gap. It wouldn't surprise me if they tried to keep Pumphrey again, or Boston Scott, and then hope one of them will step up into that role. If not this season, then certainly going into next year. Songbird Rescue Cat says, given their capabilities, statistical and injury histories, and current injury status, what are the pros and cons of Eagles running backs which you would take for a 4th running back spot? So assume Sanders, Howard and Sproles are all healthy and locks for the roster. This is going to get deep, boys. You need to all buckle up and get ready for this one. Let's start with Josh Adams. I think that's a nice place to begin with. I think he actually showed a lot last night. He played very explosively, showed a little bit of play outside the tackles, which isn't something I expected to see from him. Traditionally seen as that north-south runner. The fact he led the team in rushing last year, he's now come back, looked good in preseason. I think the team would really view him as that budget Jordan Howard type of player. So I think that he's certainly got a little bit of momentum behind him. The coaching staff obviously like him, former undrafted free agent, and he hasn't really had that much in the way of injury since the NFL. His main concern was coming out of college. Since he's hit the NFL, other than a few stumbles, I think he's been pretty sound. Corey Clement, obviously, I'd like to see him take more. I'd like to see him take more preseason snaps. Now, he started taking 11 on 11 action. We don't know the status of his injury just yet, but if he's healthy, I think we can assume he's going to be near enough a lock to make the roster. The real question, I think, becomes, do the Eagles keep 4 running backs or 5? Then you get to Donnell Pumphrey, who, for the first time in 3 years, has done something. He had a jump cut, and it was enough to send the Eagles Twitterverse into absolute oblivion. Like, I've never seen anything like it. He's being bang. He's not even been average. The fact he wasn't bullied and thrown around like a rag doll is an improvement. But I think that's 3 years too late. I really think that's 3 years too late. That first preseason, I remember covering it for Philly Sports Network and just thinking the guy is just being absolutely bullied out there. He's being lobbed around. It reminded me of my school days. And great, he may have bunked up a little bit. He's still only 176 pounds. And again, this does sound a little bit silly, but in comparison to Boston Scott, who I believe is 2 inches taller and 203 pounds, you can see the difference and the fact that they play a similar sort of game. They're both dual threat backs. They both make their money in open space. But when Boston Scott has the ball, there's a little more explosiveness to it. There's a little more assertion and aggressiveness in the running. Donnell Pumphrey and contact don't go together. It is like putting a toaster in a bath. It's only going to end one way and it's not going to be pretty. Whereas with Boston Scott, it's like putting a bath bomb in a bath. It's always going to be pretty. Lots of sparkles. So that would be the way I interpret that. Obviously, you've got Wendell Smallwood, who, I don't know, he is just the biggest bang average running back I've ever seen. He defines a fourth running back, and that's what may keep him around. The fact he's been here since 2016, he'll be cheap. I don't think he's here next year. It's his final contracted year, but he just does a bit of everything. None of it particularly well, but he can do it all. He can catch the ball, he can hold up in pass protection. The one thing he's got going for him is that he does keep his legs moving. If he does take a hit, he keeps those legs churning, keeps momentum driving forward. I like that. But he's so hesitant behind the line of scrimmage. It's he will wait a solid 6 months for a gap to open up. So I don't know. From that standpoint, I wouldn't like to see him on the roster. I think the team should finally just bite the bullet and move on from both Smallwood and Pumphrey. If it's me, I would take probably Boston Scott and Corey Clement if I could, roster spots permitting. If I can't keep Scott, you got to go with Clement, I think, just because you kind of know what you get, and if you believe he's healthy, then that's certainly going to matter. British and Irish Eagles ask, thoughts on Wentz not playing at all in preseason? No need to risk the knock off the rust, build that chemistry with live action. I think the Baltimore Ravens practices are going to help with that for sure. That's going to be a big thing. But I know there's that argument now of, 2 quarterbacks injured. Imagine if that was Wentz. It's yeah, I get that. But the guy's earning how much money to not... It's not they're not playing because he doesn't need it. It's they're not playing because they're scared he's getting injured is what it feels like. Now, I don't know with regards to how the team view the situation. If it was me, I'd have given him a 2-series sort of run and then yanked him out. But then the Jags didn't play Nick Foles. So you win some, you lose some. But overall, I'm not too concerned about it. The main concern is there are only 2 healthy quarterbacks. And as much as Clayton Thorson improved, it may stagnate still a little bit if he is taking a whole 4 quarters and you're not going to develop someone else. So that will be my main takeaway. Chris Jeffries, thank you next to Robocop, says, do you think with defensive end injuries that a trade for Clowney is on the horizon? No, I can't see that happening. The thing is, I said this in the live stream last night, the trade for Clowney movement, and I really don't want to pick at anyone here because I'm not here to do that, but it hasn't come from beat writers. It hasn't come from anyone that covers either team. In fact, I think it was... I can't remember that. I think it was Charlie Miller went into the Eagles on a training camp day, a visit, asked about Clowney twice, was shut down both times. The only people making noise about Jadeveon Clowney are people with an influence on social media, maybe a few thousand followers, a few thousand YouTube subscribers, who maybe don't understand how the trade market works or don't understand the long-term implications of signing Clowney. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, and if you want to use Clowney's name to get some clicks or some views, whatever it may be, go ahead, that's fine. The issue is that it misleads people into thinking it's plausible. And while it is, you've got the money up front, you don't have the money to pay him long term. Because you forget how Zach Ertz and Lane Johnson are structured, and how both have already been noted at wanting extensions already. Have how Carson Wentz is structured, where in 2 to 3 years' time there's backloaded deals that have to keep moving around. I've used this credit card analogy again and again and again. Howie Roseman can only keep moving it around so much until he's going to have to pay someone a chunk. Alshon Jeffrey's one of the only people getting over 10 mil this year. Fletcher Cox, I believe, is the second. But it's going to get to a point where Cox, Bradham, Johnson, even Kelsey to a degree, Brandon Brooks, Zach Ertz, Alshon Jeffrey, all of them are going to start knocking on the door for either contract extensions or earning the big money that has been reworked constantly and pushed back. You can't afford another blockbuster defensive end. Not yet. Maybe in a couple of years, if you're going to reorganise those cornerstones and you're going to say, you know what, let's take out player X. He's had his time in Philadelphia now. Let's devote that money to Clowney. Fine, that will make sense. But until then, it is the tag and trade Nick Foles thing again. I'm not trying to do this whole pat myself in the back thing, but I know for a fact I was one of the only people saying it won't happen. There is no possibility it happens. Because I spoke to a source close to the situation. I spoke to someone else who, of name like Michael Lombardi, former GM in the league, whether people love him or hate him, the fact that he understands the business, that he understands how he was part of that Matt Castle trade, which everyone alluded to, understands how it works. And he's helped me understand a lot. And the fact that I think working for an NFL agent on the side and understanding how contracts work now a little bit more, it's not feasible. It's not impossible, but it's highly unlikely at this stage. Mainly for the cultural reason. Forget the money. It's a player who is refusing to sign his franchise tender. For what? Because he wants to be traded and sign a big deal. Like, the Eagles can't sign him to a big deal. He's gone the whole offseason without signing a tender. And we're in this era now where players are starting to fight and want that NBA level control, and you can't get it. Because an NBA roster is made of like 3 people. Obviously it's 5, but it's not the point. Whereas an NFL roster, you've got 53. Not everyone can get those hundreds and hundreds of millions or those max contracts and start recruiting people like AB wants to and his weird helmet saga, like Le'Veon Bell wants to. You can't do it. It doesn't work in the same vein. And I think that's what we're beginning to see. Players like Jadeveon Clowney want to hold out, want to get that big bag, want to secure it. Someone's going to look at it and go, alright, cool, there's a kid coming out of Bama next year. First round pick, they have to pay him for 3 years. That's the way I view it. So, I don't know, it's possible I would lump my house on it going against though. Thank you. He's also asked another one. So thank you next. Who would be your signings as of right now at wide receiver, running back, linebacker, safety? I think these are the biggest holes. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know if I would sign anyone in free agency, if I'm honest. My main safety, my signing at safety would have been Trey Boston, but he's just been picked up. I think linebacker, they're going to be okay. And I think wide receiver, they've got so much talent they don't know what to do with. Running back, you can make a case. I think running back, but again, like, it's all that fringe level talent. At this point, I think you just have to let them all fight it out. Not to the death, but fight it out and see what happens. And finally, we've got almost there. Then we've got a whole other train to get through. Mike Douglas asked, how many wins do I think the Eagles will get in the regular season? My guess would be 12. James White, see, I scroll down, James, I've not forgotten you, says, thank you, next in the tweet. TJ Edwards looks good, but after playing 4, I assume there's no room on the main roster. Don't assume too soon, James. They say a saying here in England called, assuming makes an ass out of you and me. And I love that saying. My math teacher told me that once when I said I could go early for break. I don't know. I wouldn't go that far. I think that you've got to look at this from the point of Cameron Grugier-Hill, grade 3 MCL sprain. Got to look at it from the perspective of Paul Warrilow still hasn't played a game since 2017 and is battling knee injuries. That leaves Bradham, it's going to leave Zach Brown, and maybe 4, and that's 3 linebackers. Like, if you're going to put Warrilow on PUP or IR before the season and stash, I think there's a chance that Fort and either Edwards or Singleton or Jerry, that's those 3. 2 of those 3 are missing out. One of them sticks. I don't know which one, but I'm very, very excited to find out who, because my God, what a time this is for that linebacker group, and I'm sure we'll touch on that in a little bit as well. No Pro Sports asks, hey LJ, question for your podcast. Do you think the Eagles will give Wendell Smallwood more carries in the final couple preseason games to show him his potential for a trade for the end of the preseason? I don't know if he'd have any value in the trade market. I mean, if a team was really stuck and a running back went down and they needed someone, then yeah, but Smallwood's only on a 1-year deal, and if you think of what it took to get Jordan Howard, who's also got 1 year left on his contract, it's not a lot. And I think Smallwood is certainly not, I keep saying certainly today, is not the running back that Jordan Howard is. So I wouldn't put too much stock into that. I get it. It makes sense if a team is in a pinch and needs a guy that can carry 10, 11 times a game. But I wouldn't put too much on it. That would be the way I view it. But that was it for another episode of Thank You Next. I think there's probably more. They were asked a few days ago though, so I would just say, guys, if you're gonna tweet me, make sure you try and do it. Either DM me, because I can always get back to those, I don't get lost in my mentions, or just put it under the little image I put out as well. But that was a monstrous segment. I need a drink after. I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not a big Bud Light. Maybe a Bud Light, who knows? I just have an internal dialect with myself now. I'm actually losing my marbles. It's all gone a bit wrong. But before we close the show off, guys, because I know now we're approaching the 40-minute mark, which is the dreaded mark where I start saying, goodbye, listeners. See you in them. Oh, God, that's my 8-year-old holiday just coming back out. There's still one more point we've got to touch on. And I want to spend a little bit of time on this. The main topics like Thorson, like Deshaun Hall, like Sharif Miller, who balled out last night. Big mention to him. I want to save those for film rooms and for analysis on the channel, where you guys can get 20 minutes with your popcorn out and just devour it all. The podcast is meant to be fun. And I think there's two guys that weren't fun at all last night. They were the only two that I could pick out. If I could pick if we were playing the weakest link right now, they'd be voted off in the first round, because they were asked what the cows drink and they said milk. Yeah? Disgraceful. I'm talking, of course, about, and it pains me to say it, Matt Pryor, who has been flagged more times than I think an English football team's been flagged for offside in the last 5 years. I really don't understand if it's pressure. He didn't seem that bad last preseason, from what I remember. But this year, something's not quite right with Matt Pryor. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. The timing is out of sync. It's not like there's an excuse for noise, is it? It's not like that he's at the link where it's roaring with 80,000 fans. It's, you're in Jacksonville. People are sat in a swimming pool watching the game in bikinis. Unless he's been distracted by that. I don't know. I mean, I was distracted by their eyebrows, which you can't see them from down there, so who knows. But something's not right. Matt Pryor just isn't playing well right now. And I'd be a bit shocked if he makes the roster. I mean, the whole thing with Matt Pryor has been that he lined up all over TCU's offensive line. Guard, tackle, centre, tick, tick, tick. He's done it all. Tick, tick, boom. Bam, bam. Crumpets and thick boy mints. He's done it all. And then, that's fine. Versatility's great, but it's not like he's playing well. Yeah? It's like being a singer in a band, having the vocal cords of a god, and having the stage presence of a smurf. It's not going to end well. It doesn't matter how good your vocal cords are. It doesn't matter how good you can sing. If you get to a live show and you're tripping over mic cables and you're coughing and you're spluttering and you're like, come on people, let's make some noise. Like, it's not gonna, that's how I would sound if I was a singer. It isn't gonna end well. At all. It's like wanting to be a ballet dancer and having the perfect frame for it and the flamboyance and the confidence and everything, and then having the spatial awareness of I was going to say a badger, but they're quite good. Like a sloth. I don't get it. Something isn't sitting well with Matt Pryor, and if we see the same thing in week 3, he's not making it. He's not making the cut, and it's a real shame, because I've said this before, I was really high on him out of college, had him on for an interview, great guy, just can't get it done. And it's got to be a mental thing at this point. It's certainly not physical. He's got all the athletic attributes you could want. The guy is a massive dancing bear. The only way to look at it, he's great. In terms of a swing tackle or a swing guard, whatever you want to call him as an offensive lineman, he's got the physical part nailed down. The problem is that, do you know what? Despite the fact that whenever I say Matt Pryor's name, I think of Matt Pariah from that Eagles Blockbusters quiz. But being 6'7", 332 pounds is fine, but he's not doing anything with it. And then there's Wisniewski, who I've said for, the entire off-season, he won't make the team. Since the second Big V took over at right guard, it's done. It is not happening. Wiz is not making this role. I will be shocked if he does. The only way he does it is if there is a guard injury and they still cut Matt Pryor. Because as of right now, Big V is holding his own at right guard. Sayamalo is your starting left guard. And Brandon Brooks is going to be back soon anyway. They don't need him around. They can get by. So, Maybe they keep him week 1 and cut him after that. Who knows? But Wisniewski's fall from grace is one of the most heartbreaking things. And I don't think it's to do... I get the centre thing is to do with form, but other than that, comes to the team on a 1-year deal, wants to earn a big-time contract. Ends up winning Super Bowl 52, starting left guard. 2018, it gets to week 3, and they still haven't found out who the starting left guard is. Is it Wiz? Is it Warmack? No one's got a clue. No one's got a clue. It ends up being Wiz. And then you get to about week 4, and every other offensive lineman is struggling massively. And it's like, well, you can't bench Lane Johnson, even though he's got an injury, because it's Lane Johnson, right? Jason Kelce's doing alright. But Brandon Brooks is doing fine. And Jason Peters you can't bench, because Jason Peters... Oh, sorry, Wiz, you're benched. In comes Wiz. In comes Sayamalo, sorry. Wiz kicked off about it, moaned to reporters. Doesn't get signed the next year. Comes back, wanting a long deal again. Comes back after free agency, went about as well as my last... Oh no, my last day went quite well. I'd say there was a date where I went up to the girl, went to tell her her hair looked nice, and I went, is that your hair? It went as well as that. It went as well as that. And now he comes back to the Eagles, crawling back, and now he's like, oh yeah, realise what you're missing, are you? They signed him to a cheap deal, and he's not even a backup guard. He's been put to centre, where he's snapping balls lower than, they're rolling along the turf. I don't know what they're just rolling. I think I said in the stream he's been snapping to his infant child or something. And I don't understand. So, I can't see Wiz making this roster. You had Nate Herbig, who I thought got a big push at centre last night. They're trying to really drive Wisniewski off this roster. Or Keegan Render as a backup to Jason Kelce. I can't see him keeping him. I really can't. And that is how... Well, we're not going to end this show like that. We're going to end the show with the Clayton Thorson song. But, ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the end of another episode of the Outside Insider podcast. Because if we haven't reached the end of it, I'll be here for another 3 hours ranting. And we don't want that. I've got other videos to make where I rant for you, so we're going to get straight onto those. But thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this podcast. It means the absolute world to me. Whether you are in a car, whether you're walking home, whether you're in bed on your own, yeah? Don't be listening to it amidst love, mate. That's not... No, don't... What? Anyway, thank you for listening to this podcast, guys. It means everything to me. I don't think you've got any idea how much I really value the fact that you take 45 minutes every week to listen to this. It's truly mind-blowing. So thank you for being the best fans on the planet. I will leave you with the Clayton Thorson song, and I'll see you next week. Clayton Thorson, da 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 da. Clayton Thorson, da 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 da. Clayton Thorson, da 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 da. Clayton Thorson, da 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 da. Clayton Thorson.